I'm wondering if we can really know anyone. In 2012, my sister was visiting me in Australia, and we were down on the Gold Coast doing some touring, just as you do when your sister visits you. You go see tourist sites. And on the way back, we unfortunately ran into rush hour traffic on a Friday just outside of Brisbane. Not only was there rush hour traffic, but there was also a lot of construction. And so it seemed like we were going to be sitting there for quite a while. So I turned off the motor and I turned to my sister and I said, "What do you remember about your 20s?" And my sister started talking about what she remembered about going to college and the things that she had done and her first job and the people she was dating at the time and different things. And she went on for quite a while. And as she slowed down, I started telling her what I remembered about my 20s. And so we spent a bit of time that way. And when I ran out of things to say, I said, "So tell me, what do you remember about your 30s?" And so she proceeded to tell me about her 30s, and I told her about mine. And we were in our 50s, so we went ahead and did our 40s and then started with our 50s. And by this time, the traffic was already breaking up and we were free to go. But we were having such a good time learning about each other that we just carried on all the way back to Chenrezig. So that was a very interesting experience, and we also shared about our childhood, and we came from the same family, but we have very different memories. Isn't that interesting? Um, so then a few years before my mother died, I had this idea to ask her to tell me about her life. I knew the main features, but I didn't really know a lot of the details. So at first she looked at me like, "Why would you want to know?" And then she got into it. And I asked her permission, "Can I record this?" And she agreed. So I turned on the recorder. 45 minutes later, she had told me about the first 10 years of her life. And she said, "Can we take a break?" Now, I knew a lot of the facts, a lot of the details. I had heard it before, but what was new was some of the nuances of the insights that she was gaining as a woman in her 80s. And it's a treasure to have that recording. Unfortunately, we didn't go any further with it. We just got busy and we never got back to it. So that was another experience of sharing lives. And then last September, when I visited my sister and brother in Tulsa, we invited my dad's remaining sister and brother to come over one afternoon, and I had a list of questions for them too. I think I had Googled questions to ask your grandparents. And so I went through the list and picked out the ones I thought would be most interesting to find out more about what was my dad's early life like from their point of view. And again, it was a very lovely conversation. They seemed very touched that people would want to know about their lives. Um, and it brought a sense of intimacy and closeness that I hadn't expected. These are people that I don't really know that well. Again, I know details about their lives, but I don't really know them. So if I ask, do I really know any of these people? My sister, my mother, my aunt and uncle, friends from throughout life, I think I would have to say no. So a few weeks ago, I shared an experience that I've been playing with in winter retreat about meditating on equanimity. And I would call a friend, an enemy, and a stranger to mind, and I would try to regress in my mind, just trying to get more of a picture of who they are, thinking about their life in terms of 10-year chunks, to just imagine into what their life was like and how they've changed as a way of getting back to being able to see that we've had infinite lifetimes together. So I'd imagine them, as a 50-year-old, 40-year-old, 30, 20, 10-year-old, as like a 5-year-old child, as a little baby in their mother's arms, and then thinking about the previous lives that they've had. And I found this really helpful, really beneficial. And this technique has had a strong impact on my mind, and I continue to explore it. So I've found this as a very good way to break down some of the automatic labeling of people into categories of friends, enemies, and strangers. And recently, this process revealed to me just how superficial these labels are of friend, enemy, and stranger in a way that surprised me. In fact, it shocked me. Like, do I really know anyone? So beginning with a stranger, I can quickly recognize how little I know about them. For example, I might call to mind Becky, the woman who does the scheduling in the physical therapy department at the hospital. I've seen her every week for the last 6 weeks. I know who she is. I can label her, but I don't know if she's married. I don't know if she has kids. I don't know about any of the highlights of her life. And what I found was by doing this process with her, thinking about, well, just imagining what might it be like? Did she go to college? What did she do right out of college? What was she like in high school? What was her family life like? I started to get really curious about her. Like, I want to know more about her. It's kind of an interesting byproduct of this process. It brought a lot more curiosity. And so the next time I have gone into the physical therapy department, I notice Becky. I make a point to make eye contact with her and just say hello. I don't ask her about the details of her life. That would be odd. But I feel a kinship with her. So it's reasonable that we won't know such intimate details about strangers, but I was quite surprised, even shocked, as I said, to discover in meditation that when I turn my attention to friends or family, or enemies, people I find challenging, I found the same was true, actually. And I'll bet you've had this experience. One of your friends says or does something that really surprises you. It shocks you, in fact. Anytime we get angry with somebody, probably we're shocked. We had an idea about who this person was and how they were supposed to behave. And all of a sudden, they've blown our conceptualization of who they are and how they're supposed to behave towards me, right? We've all had that experience. But what about loved ones? For example, thinking of my sister, we physically moved apart when we were in our 20s. We went our separate ways. We went to different colleges. We had different careers. We lived in different cities for the most part. And although we've stayed in touch by phone calls and visits and emails and now video chats, there's a lot about my sister that I still don't know. There's so many things about her that I don't know and I never thought to ask. And I'm curious about them, but yet I make this assumption that I know my sister. It's my sister after all. Of course I know her, but do I? This exercise has really showed me that perhaps I don't know her. And that allows me to stay more curious and present with her when I'm talking with her on a video chat. Really curious, like, who are you? How do you think? So I could probably tell you how she voted in the last election. I could tell you, I know for sure. I could tell you what she thinks about the war in Ukraine or about the recent school shootings. I could tell you some of that. But do I know the countless causes and conditions that make my sister who she is? Not at all. And that's just talking about this one life. We're not even talking about myriad, countless past lives. And yet I count her among one of my very best friends. And yet, to me, she's a bit of a stranger. So I found this quite interesting. And what about someone I label as an enemy? What do I know about that person? Again, I might know some highlights about their life. I might know about some of their accomplishments. I might know about some of the difficulties that could contribute to why, for me, they tend to be a difficult person. But when I imagine some of the phases of their lives, again, I can imagine those things, but I don't know. There's so many things I don't know. And in the bigger scheme of just this one life, I know so very little, and yet I think I know enough to label them an enemy or a difficult person, a challenging person. How arrogant. I can even ask if I know myself, because I certainly surprise myself sometimes. I say things, I do things, and I think, where did that come from? So do I even know myself? And I've been present I think I've been mostly present for most of my experiences in life. Maybe a few I wouldn't have remembered, but yeah, do I even really know myself? This is the great question in Buddhism, isn't it? Who are you? How do you exist? And yet, imagining friends, enemies, and strangers in this way, there are certain things that I do know, as we often say. I do know that this person, in every moment, in every phase of their life, they want happiness. They want to be free of suffering. That I know for sure. And like me, I'm assuming, I can only assume that they're caught in cyclic existence, just like me, being thrown around by their previous karma and their afflictive patterns. And through this equanimity meditation, I can at least imagine the strong possibility that we've had countless experiences together in previous lives. Most of them would have been, we would have been strangers, but in some of those, some portion of those previous lifetimes, we've known each other very intimately as family, as friends, um, and even as enemies. So this has been a good reminder for me to really question my assumptions that I have about knowing anyone, and either as a friend or as an enemy, a challenging person, or even as a stranger, and to get much more curious about, well, who is this person? And so what about you? Do you feel like you know the people that you interact with every day? It's a good question to ponder.